And we are live. Thank you, everyone, for joining with our next live stream tonight. We are now on episode 13. 13 is my lucky number. Some people might find that to be unlucky, but not me. Tonight, we have an extra special episode. We are continuing our series on scenario bags. We are going to compare and contrast wildfire bags. It's something that I brought up. Dealing with wildfires and, helping people out in the wildfires and escaping from them, going a little bit beyond the normal 72-hour bag. And we're also going to compare and contrast to CBRN bags. That's chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear for the people that don't know that acronym. Now, we will probably bring in escape and evasion again. We didn't we weren't able to get that in depth with that last time. So we're going to try to get that in here a little bit as we start our conversation. But tonight on the panel, we have Brendan. Okay. And then, of course, we have Aaron. These are our regulars. But we have an extra special guest. Okay. Our buddy Pablo. He's joining us tonight. And let's see. Hey, Devo. Just to anyone that's tuning in for the first time, the gist of these scenario bags is for us to go and compare them and kind of help ourselves and help the audience come together for we'll call it a core bag or core scenario bag. So you can find a bag for anything on YouTube, and we're trying to sit there and narrow all these options down into like a basic core bag or two, and which is a few extras here and there based on the scenario. So everyone loves to talk about a Bob bug out bag or get home bag and what have you. So this kind of helps us hone in and help people do better with what they have and make better choices on the purchases that they make in the future. All right. And tonight we're going to start with Pablo because he was watching our episode from last week and he was sharing with us in the green room a little bit about some of the changes that he made. So that was very exciting for us because that's kind of one of the goals. We all want to do better. We all want to get better. So we will start out with Pablo talking about the changes that he made, and he can explain how it fits in with his bag. All right, Pablo?
Yeah, so I wasn't able to join last week, but I did watch it afterwards. And a lot of the changes or things that I do are really based on that type of conversation. Um, it applied it as well in other aspects. I had a separate conversation with Dominic a couple of weeks ago about security. And after he left, it was like, wait, am I actually doing what I just talked about? And I went in there, was like, you know what? I want to change this and this and this because I'm not using this, I'm not using that. And I think this could be better. So from that perspective, like in my car, I usually have a back panel that's attached to the passenger seat that you can just take off and it converts into a backpack. And that panel has 3 pouches, one for medical, one for where I used to keep water filtration and that kind of stuff, and a few energy bars, and another one where I just keep water. And then in the trunk, I had a separate bag with a spare set of clothes, shoes, socks, a towel, stuff like that. So after the podcast from last week, I started thinking, it's like, wait a second, if I actually need to do this stuff or use it, I don't want to carry 2 bags around. 1, and 2, I don't really have a lot of stuff combined. And then I had a couple other bags inside the house. Like, you know what? I'm going to take all that stuff out, combine it. And I ended up with this bag that it weighs 23 pounds. It has everything that the other back panel had, plus a lot more stuff. So like I still have a full change of clothes. I have a lot more medical, and a lot more medical meaning I have 4 tourniquets between Cat 5s and the rats tourniquets. I always keep the rat tourniquets around because my nieces are pretty small. So if I try to put a cat on their arm, it's not going to work. I have a lot of gauzes, chest seals, something specific to treat burns, bandages, tape, SAM splints. Says tape to hold the SAM splints on. And as well as boo-boo kits, just regular Band-Aids and ibuprofen, that kind of stuff. In the front, I keep one of the tourniquets. I keep a GMRS radio that's waterproof. I keep a spare flashlight. I always have a flashlight on me when I go out, but there's a spare one here. There's also a headlamp, spare batteries for everything. A Ride in the Rain. I have a Nalgene, and inside the Nalgene, there's a Sawyer filter, there are electrolytes, and there's aqua tabs. And this one I got from Cana Provisions. This actually has instructions on how to use everything from bleach to treat water to aqua tabs to whatever it is. These are all the instructions for all the different containers that you can have, which is really useful because I don't memorize any of this stuff. I also keep a hat, a shamag, and a bushcraft knife. Not very expensive. It's a condor knife I got from Amazon, but it's still pretty girthy. It's pretty useful. I think that's it. Oh, and I also I don't have a good rain jacket, but I do have a poncho that has eye holes that you can use to create shelter. And I also have a big roll, actually bigger than this one, 550 paracord. So the purpose of the bag is if I actually need to get home or get to someone else's house whenever I'm out, that'll get me there. Ideally, I wouldn't want to do that overnight, but if I have to do it overnight, then I'm able to get some shelter. Also have some food. So I have protein bars, but I also have some of these, which are energy gels used by marathon runners. So they provide a lot of good energy in a very small, light package, as well as some of these, just energy bars. That's all they do is give you energy so you can keep going. And I also have a couple bottles of water. Like, yes, I can find water and treat it, but I have a couple bottles if I actually need them right now.
Hey, Pablo, some questions for you. Now that the energy gel you said the marathoners use, is that like meant to like while they're moving, basically, right? So they can kind of like sip and suck on that?
Yeah, they usually have these special aprons where they have just little pockets where they keep these. So that's the point. Just rip it, put it in your mouth, squeeze it, toss it, keep going.
And I think that's such a great add-on because, you know, who doesn't want a nice meal when they're out in the woods and stuff like that, Mount House or what have you? But a lot of times, you know, you want to keep time or, you know, you're trying to be out weather. Being able to eat on the go can make a huge difference. I just wanted to mention that. And another thing that I thought was really great too is the fact that on that bottle that you had, it had directions on to do multiple things. We've mentioned before on previous podcasts about having like direction cards or how-to cards. Okay. Now one would say, well, you should already know how to use it if it's in your bag. Well, we got to remember our bag is not just for us. Our bag is for our family members, people in, you know, that you might come across, or especially if you're in a rescue position in a sense. When we talked about search and rescue last week, we got to carry gear for us, but we need to carry gear for other people, whether it's calories, you know, hydration, the salts, and the fact that we got to be in better shape so then we can function on just like a high energy bar and what have you. Aaron, what are your thoughts on Pablo's changes?
They all make sense to me. I mean, I like the marathoner deal. I've actually been using some stuff called 40,000 volts. It's trace minerals. It's liquid. It's pre mixed. And so I keep a little bit of pre-workout, and mine is the stuff that you get from behind the counter over there at GNC. It's good for putting a little pep in your step. And also like I think that having quick calories available that don't take up much space that definitely makes sense to me.
Yeah. We know
Yeah. The last item I have is a little Danka pouch that has just personal hygiene, like deodorant, sunscreen, bug spray, that kind of stuff. So again, if I need to stay somewhere overnight, I can actually kind of clean myself a little bit, be nice and fresh, because that sounds kind of dumb, but at the same time, it can lift your spirit a lot. If you need to keep going, trekking, carrying stuff. If my nieces are with me, I need to carry them because they can't walk or run just like I do. Actually, yesterday I had a little practice with that. Tuesdays we go to soccer. So one of them wanted to play soccer, but the 7-year-old wanted to play soccer, but the 4-year-old is a little too small to be playing with us. So I just put her on my shoulders, and that was my workout. Running around with the 4-year-old on my shoulders, playing soccer with the 7-year-old. Yeah. So if I need to run or move fast, like she's on my shoulders, and I take off.
That's some next dad work there, man.
Yeah. Well, your hygiene kit, that's a good idea too. And it reminded me of something that I got when I started hiking. I learned from somebody, and it's kind of like a friction stick. It's almost like a deodorant. It's in the same kind of plastic shell, and you put it along the grooves, where your thighs are. So any kind of your friction points, kind of replaces using baby powder on your body. Some people put that on their feet and stuff, but people would put baby powder in between their thigh and their pelvis, where I think the friction stick works out pretty good. Brendan, what are your thoughts on his changes?
I dig it. I like it. I thought it was funny because like half of the stuff you listed off, what you put in the bag, I carry on me daily. So obviously I like that stuff. I do have some experience with the energy gels because I do a lot of driving just by nature of the volunteer work I do. At any given moment, I might get called away to go do a 12-hour drive. I don't like the taste of them, but I'll give them that they work. I first started looking into them when I was trying to find a civilian legal combat pill pack kind of deal. So antibiotic, non-narcotic painkiller, and then something just kind of to keep you awake. The military uses modafinil, which is non-narcotic, but it is not over the counter. You can still get it, but do your own research. But yeah, I like them. I like everything on there.
Very cool. Yeah, that's one of the great things about when we have these panel discussions. We have all these different experiences with products and things we've done and things that we see, and it all helps out. Great job on your upgrades, Pablo. Appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, so the point was removing 2 bags, combine them, and now I only have 1 bag.
Yeah.
So again, I weighed it. It's 23 pounds, which I know I can handle. The plate carrier I used to work out is 16 pounds. Mm-hmm. It's pretty close, but I'm pretty used to moving around and working out with it. So
yeah, a thing that Pablo was referencing. We were hanging out a couple Sundays ago, and we were having some conversations about people in general making purchases or investments in gear and everything else, being very intentional or purposeful. We all love to buy gear or get gear and trade for gear and stuff like that. Our conversation started out with when it came to firearms, and where some guys we see on YouTube, man, these guys will have 10, 20, 30 different rifles, and an equal number of pistols. Now if you're a YouTuber and you're doing gun shows and stuff like that, I get it, there's a purpose. But there's a lot of people that just gather gear, okay, like we gather books. And if we look here, Aaron has a lot of books, and he ain't the only one. I have a lot of books. I don't have as many as that. But there's a time in my life where I'm like, oh, this would be interesting to read. And man, I've been walking out of Barnes and Nobles, okay, with 5 or 6, 7, 10 books. Now, did I read all those 10 books? No, I didn't. They sat in my house and I start to read one or two and then get caught up in something else. So we are all guilty of it in one way or another. We all like to, gather things, there's a popular YouTuber that most of us here like to watch. And I think he's mentioned many times he loves to collect axes, other guys collect knives, So the conversation me and Paul were having is like, how can we sit there and pare down what we have, okay, and basically allow the time and the resources to be available to be proficient with what we have, okay? It could be a firearm. It could be, tactical packs or, whatever, knives or whatever the case may be. So, which is kind of the intent of why we're talking about all these bags, so we could try to slim down and be really purposeful with what we have. Okay. Let me give a couple of shout outs while we are here. We got Devo in the house. We got someone new, Mardoc de la Fuente. Have no idea who that is. Let's see. Obviously, it's somebody new, because if it was someone that we already know their little nicknames on YouTube. Nate's in the house. Very cool. All right. So we will start the conversation talking about wildfire bags. And I'll kick it off. I'll throw a couple of items out there, which I thought would be good for a wildfire bag. Now, when you're dealing with a wildfire, outside of fire, the biggest thing is smoke. So how do we sit there and either hinder or prevent ourselves from breathing the smoke? Well, we can use an N95 mask, a neck gaiter. We also don't want it to go in our eyes, so we could possibly use some kind of safety goggles. If there's embers flying around, we need some kind of gloves. We got to be careful with the type of gloves that we would pick, because not all gloves have any kind of fire retardant attributes to them.
Some gloves are actively bad and they'll melt to your hands. And then
yeah.
All other problems.
Yep. See. Neck gaiter. Oh, half face respirator. So guys that are in sanding or for auto body or carpentry or what have you, there's all kinds of different filters for things. I'm sure many of them can be multi-purpose and be able to at least keep this, most of the smoke out so you can breathe.
So the one I like for the half face, there's 3M makes dozens of different ones. I can never remember the number code on it, but they each have a color code with them as well. 3M makes one. It's the yellow band, and it's good for pretty much all your tear gas and everything below that. The smoke, vapors. We keep the yellow banded ones ready for in case of if we have to drive through an area that's been smoked out, tear gas, OC, things of that nature. And then it also does everything below that. That's the most expensive one, but I think a pair of them runs like $40 or something. Yeah. So you need 2 for your respirator. And then typically the half face respirator itself is going to run you another $20-$30. And they come with just the basic, just your dust and smoke and things like that. And one thing we've recently, after all the fun with the peaceful protests that have been happening as of late, just about everyone in my family wears glasses. So we found these plastic. They remind me of like when you were in school and you had to do the little science labs, the big, clear rubber goggles. Found those at Lowe's for $5. Fits over our glasses perfectly. We can strap them down. We get a pretty decent seal I wouldn't want to stay on too long because you are going to have a little bit of break because the arms of the glasses. But between those strap-on goggles and a half-face respirator, I'm pretty confident trying to get through an area. Like I said, I probably wouldn't be wanting to stand around too long, but if you're just trying to move through and get out, it'll handle.
Yeah, and nothing is 100%. Well, there are some things, but most of us are not going to be able to, afford or justify the cost of, say, like a mirror, full face mask, and what have you. No shade to anybody that goes and gets those, but we're trying to be practical for what we could, utilize. That's easy to be around. Now I'm sure these have like ratings similar to like the N95 masks, and it's probably like particulate sizes and what have you. Let's see, Aaron. Let's see, Brendan. So, you ever have to go and chip tile?
Yeah, all the time.
Okay, so I'm assuming that generates a lot of dust particles and stuff like that.
So I run a dustless system because it's my business. I have a big old filter and vacuum system that hooks to my stuff. But yeah, if that vacuum's off within 30 seconds, that whole area is dusted out.
Ah, okay.
Now with that, I don't if I'm not running my vacuum system, I will wear a respirator. If I'm running my vacuum system, I just pull the neck gaiter down over my face because you have tiny shards of ceramic flying all through the air, and that's never fun when you come home and you're covered in hundreds of little micro cuts.
Yeah.
So.
Very cool. All right. Let's see. Let me throw a couple more items out there, and then we could touch on them. So we need to see the way. So we all have flashlights in our bags and stuff like that, but I think a headlamp really is important in this kind of a situation because you need your hands to be free. Whether it's depending on how thick the smoke is, or if you're helping somebody, you can't hold a flashlight. So you got to keep those hands free. Now, that's kind of like personal PPE. Okay. And then I kind of went into some kind of a tool aspect because there's hey, I need to evacuate from my house. Okay, so this is some items I would need. So this is beyond the 72-hour bag. Okay, the items that I brought up. So now it's some tools to where you might need these tools to kind of get out, but more so to go and help, your friends and your family and what have you. A shovel, an axe, a saw, a pry bar. Well, you're probably asking, well, why would I need that stuff? Well, if you're trying to sit there and, if I'm using the right terminology, kind of like a fire line. If you ever watch forest firefighter guys, those guys are like cutting a line into the ground. So if you don't want to try to protect your house or part of your property or your corral or your barn where your animals are, you can do stuff like that. If you need to cut some things down. Now, if you're just trying to get someone in and out, you might not need these tools. But if you're trying to save your property or save your family's property, these tools might come in handy. Have any of you guys ever done any kind of like work like that, trying to save from potential forest fire? Or
so just as far as like mediation goes, I make a rule that there is nothing like 7 foot and under on my trees, because fire crawls across the ground, it catches the tree and goes from there. And as well as I try to keep any branches or anything like that cut back about 20 foot from my house. Those are just recommendations I've heard over the years from people who do that line of work. Other than that, it's no real experience other than just the basic mediation, try and keep things cleared away from the house as far as like dead grass, dead branches, things of that nature. So,
yeah. I guess if the wind is really bad, which happens a lot of times with wildfires, whether it's to start them or because basically the ecosystem changes once the fire gets to a certain size anyways, and then you're going to have wind. I can't explain how the weather works that way, but I've seen that.
It sucks up from the bottom.
Okay. All right. And then let's see. And then a fire extinguisher. Now, fire extinguisher, we have them in our house. I mean, I have tons of them all over my house. It's probably good to have one in your car anyways. I don't know how much. So this would probably be like an add-on to keep in your car to accompany your bag, because who wants to put the weight on for a fire extinguisher in your bag? It probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I've never actually had to deploy a fire extinguisher, so I don't know like how long it's going to last, like how much square footage it would cover, or any kind of range. Anyone got any experience like that using a fire extinguisher?
A couple of them to put out like kitchen fires and stuff. They are greatly different in make and model and volume that they carry. So it's like asking, general questions about cars. Well, you didn't tell me, is it a Ford or is it a Toyota? What model is it? Is it a pickup truck? Is it a, minivan?
Yeah. Well, there's fire extinguisher that you keep in your kitchen, which is different than a standard fire extinguisher because you're dealing with grease fires and what have you. If you guys were going to put a fire extinguisher in your vehicle, would that be more of a standard like house fire extinguisher, or to be something? I'm sorry.
See, I was going to mention a couple of things. One, regarding PPE, I would also, you brought up two situations. One, I'm actually running away from a wildfire. Two, I'm going towards it to help other people. If you're going towards it, your PPE is going to include special clothing, like probably not an actual firefighter suit, because those are like heavy and expensive, but some kind of protection. So in that regard, the experience I have is from auto racing. There is every single piece of clothing from a head sock, shirt, pants, underwear, socks that are fire resistant, not fireproof, but fire resistant. They also very light and they wick away moisture very easy. So that's kind of like part of that. Those properties that wick away any moisture that you have. But because in those scenarios, a car on the racetrack can catch fire really quick. It hasn't happened to me, but it has happened to my friends. And having those items on you really helps. They're not very expensive, but they are a pretty good option for that particular scenario. The other one I would consider, and this is from when I took the CERT class, when we did the fire piece, one of the ways you can protect yourself if your house is on fire and you're trying to get out, or potentially if your child or your pet is inside, you have to go back in and get them. One of the best things you can do is just drench a towel in water and put it on yourself.
I'm going to argue that. And the reason I'm going to argue that is because I brought that up in front of a firefighter, and he said that is a beautiful way to scorch your lungs.
Really?
Yes, because I was always told that exact same thing. Wet a bandana, put it over to keep from smoke and whatnot going in. And he said that he's seen more than a few people do that and mess themselves up very badly.
I wonder what the science is behind that.
I'm just defaulting to someone who has more experience to me.
No, I think pretty much all of us grew up. We see it on TV, and we're probably told, and any kind of safety thing is, wet towels, put them under the door to block the smoke. Wet a blanket or a towel and put that on so you can try to get out. So that is something that's been shared with everybody. But obviously a firefighter is dealing with this kind of stuff. And they don't wet themselves. Now they obviously use the water to wet the building and what have you. And they're wearing special clothing, but that's something I want to dig into a little bit different. Being that maybe somehow we could sit there and put something different in a bag to help. So one thing I did read online, it said not to wear like polyesters,
It'll melt.
All the artificial kind of stuff, because it would, I guess, melt to your skin.
Yep.
And it didn't say why, but then I thought about it. I'm like, all that stuff is made out of petroleum-based products. Am I right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
it'll melt to your skin, and taking it off is really painful.
Yeah. So cotton is they're saying, I mean, which is common with t-shirts and what have you. But this day and age, so many pieces of our clothing are mixed blends. Might have a little bit of cotton, and who really even pays attention to it? I mean,
for us as like civilians who have to pay for our own stuff on this, one of the things I've found that's the most reasonable is find out what welders wear, and then go pick up the Harbor Freight version of that. I've actually got a couple of the balaclavas that are meant to go underneath the welding hood. But you guys notice I have a beard. If a spark gets in there, and usually I smell burning hair before it gets too out of hand, but it's not great. But with you were talking about that firefighter talking about not wetting the towel. So I have a couple of firefighters that I've known for years. One is he works at an airport specifically, so he deals with like JP8 and aviation fuel and stuff like that, crazy stuff. And then another one is he's actually a captain up in the villages, so he's up there dodging the Lufa mafia. But he was telling me that like a lot of times when you see somebody scorching their lungs or something like that, it's because they put that on and then they do something they wouldn't have normally done. It has some sort of intermediate like effect and benefit, but it's not like a let's go back into the house, type deal if there's a fire in the house or whatever. But he was telling me even with the I don't know if you guys have ever seen firefighters having like huge mustaches. So back in the old days, they used to wet those, and they would use that as like they'd breathe through their mouth because it would hang over their mouth entirely. But now they've got bunker gear, so they still a lot of them I know still have the giant, ridiculous like face broom size mustaches.
Yeah. Well, it brings up an interesting point since you guys both have these long beards, and it causes two risks. One, obviously catching fire. Okay. Whether you're making a campfire, cooking on a grill, or in a forest fire. But also using any kind of face mask, it's got to hinder the seal. How do you guys deal with that being bearded guys?
I keep a pair of clippers close by in most of my bug out bags.
Oh, you're going to shave on the spot.
Yeah. So I'll be Mr. Clean if I need to. It's also good for like that E&E stuff that we were talking about. Changing your appearance really quick is typically a good idea if you're, running out for that. So it serves a couple of different scenario purposes. But yeah, they don't make a gas mask that covers bearded people. They've got these little like escape hoods, but they're only rated for about 15 minutes. So
yeah, well, the same goes with glasses. When you said that, I was like, I need glasses.
Yep.
So how is it going to seal properly?
Yeah.
So
they're fairly small, but still.
So I wear the half face respirators pretty often. For me, I've noticed just the way it sits on the jawline, I have not had any problems. That being said, I'm dealing mostly with general dust and construction debris. I'm not dealing with smoke. I'm not dealing with, tear gas or anything of that nature. I get a pretty decent seal. That being said, in my bag that holds my half face respirator, I keep a little bottle of Vaseline. And my thoughts are, if it's getting that bad, you scoop that up, slather the beard down, slather the outside, press it in, and create a pseudo gasket. Like I said, I've never tried it. It's just a thought in my mind. I love the thought process of shaving. Now, I'm going to share a story I heard years ago, and it's super, super like very specific to the event that happened. It was a DEA agent who was undercover, and he was going into a drug lab, and he shaved his face to put his respirator on and ended up absorbing through his pores. He was in an acid lab and absorbed an insane amount of LSD through the pores in his skin. And I think I was on an episode of Gangland back in the day or something like that. And it was he had some fun stories. They locked him in a dark room in the hospital and gave him a bunch of Valium. And what they didn't realize is they locked him in the pediatric ward. So like the wallpaper is all dinosaurs and shit like that. So yeah, he had a fun time. But, so that's what I think of every time I think about shaving my face for a gas mask.
Yeah. Well, you know, funny you mentioned that because I remember when I was in the Marines and we were in boot camp and we were in the gas chamber, the CS, they popped the CS tablets on us. They made us PT for like 10, 15 minutes beforehand. And we didn't understand it why at first. Because they want you sweating and to make all your pores open as possible. So when they pop those tablets, okay, you're getting full absorption through your skin. And when they rip that mask off, if you don't take it off, you know, if you guys have ever been pepper sprayed or had CS gas, you know, you breathed it in and stuff like that. Let me tell you, it feels like your lungs are on fire. Okay. And all your orifices in your face, everything, your nose, your eyes, everything, you're drooling, you're crying, nose is running down to your knees. Every membrane is on fire, your lungs, everything. So there's your physical attributes there, but then it's the psychological. Because you just think, oh my God, am I going to die? Even though you know you're not going to die because you intentionally went in there. You a lot of times you panic like that. I seen guys that were the baddest, toughest dudes from New Jersey. You know, I was in the Northeast when I grew up in the Northeast. So all the Northeast kids are the ones that went to Parris Island, South Carolina for Marine Corps boot camp. Those guys are all tough guys in boot camp. Let me tell you, they were the first ones to run out of that the gas chamber. Drill instructors are grabbing them, throwing them back in. So the reason I bring this up is we see all these videos online and on TV of pepper spray being deployed. And sometimes you see guys on like the cop shows and stuff, they're still coming at you. You know, they might be half blind or whatever. It seems like a lot of their adrenaline is just overcoming or they're hopped up on something. But I think most normal people, you're getting pepper sprayed or getting CS gas. The last thing you're thinking about is like running at somebody, unless I guess if you think you're trying to make them stop. So it's a different scenario from what I experienced. But I mean, how's that impact how you behave and everything else? So if people are wondering, why should I invest or not invest in any of this stuff? So you can be a bystander going through a protest, and you know, once the police start moving in, man, they're throwing the big canisters, or some of the cities have the turrets that are shooting that stuff out, or they're shooting pepper spray balls out, and you're collateral damage. So what do you guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have a little story about that. When I was about 12, I found a little can in my dad's car. It had no labels. I didn't know what it did. He was not around. I was like, squirt. I saw a little mist. It's like, it doesn't smell like perfume. Wind direction changed, and it hit me in the face. So yeah, it was not direct on my face, but I still got a whiff that it was. I didn't know what was happening. I had to go into the bathroom. Like, that's just a natural reaction. Wash my face for like 10 minutes until I stopped crying, basically. But yeah, that stuff hits you really, really hard. I mean, this was a long time ago, so I'm sure stuff right now is a lot more potent.
Yeah.
But there is a fraction of the population that is just absolutely immune. You can hit them in the face directly, and it has zero effect. The same goes for dogs. Some people carry it to protect themselves for dogs. On dogs, some breeds, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, you know, one thing that I saw online recently was a lady, a former Marine, and her MOS was dealing with all this stuff and testing all the guys that would go through it and what have you. And it made me think back, because you see the videos online of protesters or whatever, and they're all pouring water. Where's the milk? And I'm like, I don't remember any of that stuff when I was getting gassed. And I remember they were telling us, just let the air get you, let it all out. And the lady reiterated, it's the wrong thing to do is to sit there and pour water and milk and stuff on there. You need to, because you're just rubbing it in.
Yep.
Pushing it more into your body. So, which made sense because they want our pores open. Okay. So you got to just let yourself air out. Now, I don't think most people know that. And we want, obviously, no one wants to suffer like that. And, if we see something on TV, we think it's real. Have you guys thought of, or have you seen any real ways to treat from pepper spray or CS gas outside of what I just said? Any myth busting here?
I've seen people try to use the cream, like heavy cream, because they're thinking that they're going to use that to naturally counteract the capsaicin that's in the pepper spray. I've been sprayed with pepper spray, and I've also sprayed multiple people at different times in my life. I love pepper spray. It definitely has a place in my self-defense plans because it's eye gouge in a can, but it's also really easy if I can say, hey, I didn't start out wanting to shoot somebody to defend myself. I sprayed him and he was still coming. So, he obviously really wouldn't have this any other way. And people that you spray show up in court looking pretty decent, in the 6 months or a year down the road. It's different if you change the shape of the guy's skull with a couple of, boots or whatever. But pepper sprayed, man, it's a horrible, couple hours, but it goes away eventually. When he goes in front of the jury and the prosecutor, you want him looking like nothing ever happened to him. One of the things I've noticed is a lot of the people that have been in the corrections system will cover up, and they'll the minute that you get the spray out, they'll cover up. So I've seen there's some other technique stuff to deal with that I'll talk to you about after the show, but it's pretty fun. Regarding the neutralizing wipes that they sell and then all the gels and everything like that, none of them work. The only thing that I've seen kind of sort of work is Dawn dish soap used to scrub it off, because the mechanical action of what soap does on a molecular level will encapsulate that capsaicin and get it off of you. But when you see people that are just dumping water over their head, it's dude, idiot, that's going to carry that down somewhere south, and you might not want something spicy where that water's going to run. Gravity's really going to beat on you for a little bit here,
Yeah.
So,
the reason I've kind of been taking the conversation this way is because we normally don't train, okay, for irritants. I mean, if you're out in a forest fire, the smoke, or if you're in a house fire, the smoke is really what's going to get you a lot of the times before the fire does.
yeah.
So either it's going to irritate your eyes so much that you can't see and you're fumbling around, or you can't breathe, okay, or it becomes more challenging to breathe, and you start making choices that are not in your best interest. But then even on the CBRN side, you never know what kind of chemicals are going to be thrown out somewhere. Now, when CBRN, that's for when they're talking about chemicals, they're really talking about military grade ones, or some chemical plant just leaked something very bad, like in India a couple of decades ago. But we can't prepare for that, but we can prepare for if we're dealing with smoke, or if we're dealing with CS or pepper gas. So it might be worthwhile, okay, to find some light duty pepper spray or something like that. And how Pablo, when he was a little kid, he didn't know what it was, jacked himself a little bit. Maybe you sit there and, you work with some buddies and you do a little pepper spray for two reasons. One, and it's the same reason why they do it in the military. Okay. It is to teach you, okay, or your body and your mind to know what it's like. Okay. And then once you get through it, you see, okay, I can survive this, and it reduces the likelihood that you will panic, which is the whole point of it in the first place.
So I've shared a couple secondhand stories here, and we'll share another one. I have a real close buddy of mine. He's a retired corrections officer, and he was the captain of a SHU unit, so special housing unit. All the fun guys who don't get to go to general pop because they can't play well with others.
Mhm.
And he would tell me at the beginning of every shift, he kept a Ziploc baggie full of pepper balls in his desk. And every shift, he would smack it against the desk, open it up, and zip it up. And he would do that every day to build the tolerance, because when they decide to gas something, they are gassing the whole unit. They had these things they called hydrants, which she explained to me looked like the big old, 20-liter oxygen tanks with a fire extinguisher nozzle on it. It was just CS gas. And so if they had someone locked into a cell or whatever, someone barricaded themselves somewhere, they would just stick the nozzle in through the slot and just open it up. Or they're throwing the little, aerosolized grenades, or, they've got their individual, because you can't have firearms in the prison. So it was all pepper, either CS or OC. And he would take a hit of that every day, trying to build up a tolerance. And it reminds me too, you mentioned the woman who ran the gas chamber for the military. So a few years ago, when I was down in Fort Myers for Hurricane Ian for Grindstone, the lady whose house we were working on, that was her thing in the Army. She ran the gas chamber. And she said, you do that, so many times over the course of months, she can drop one of those canisters in front of her and have a perfectly fine conversation with you while you are dying.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just standing there laughing because she just built that tolerance up over time. So moral of the story, pepper spray your friends.
Yeah. Well, you guys, I'm sure Brendan has built a lot of like campfires, bonfires, and what have you. Do you find that you're able to stay closer to the fire longer the more you do it, using that same premise you're just talking about, exposing yourself small doses at a time? I know when like I go camping and stuff and we're trying to sit around the fire, and depending on what way the wind is blowing, man, I just got to back up and move my chair.
Yeah, it doesn't really bother me anymore. I've noticed that, especially with like my nephews and stuff. Smoke hits them in the face and then they immediately got to jet the other way. I'm at the point where, it's the wind's going to shift in a few seconds. Just sit there and take it. And to touch on that too, we were talking about the respirators earlier. As someone who works in a respirator often, put on a respirator and do a workout. You will do maybe 30% of what your body is willing to do without it, because it's restricted breathing. It's uncomfortable. It's a pain in the ass. Now again, do it enough, you'll build up that tolerance. For me, now I can work a whole day in a respirator. Is it comfortable? No. Am I yanking it off at the first opportunity? Yes. But I can work unimpeded with a respirator on. But that is something that needs to be trained in. It's not something you can just throw on. And
that's an excellent point. And it kind of goes across the board in preparedness of so many people. They buy gear and they don't use it. They don't practice with it. And they don't train with it. I mean, just think of how many people out there have faced respirators or the Mira, and they've never broken out of the box, or they just played around with it and didn't train with it. And when the situation comes, the odds are they're not going to be able to have it on very long. So it might not even help in saving them, because they're going to go from one panic to another panic.
Yeah.
Brendan,
There's oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, Brendan froze up. I was wondering if he was going to say something, but he froze. So you're going to say something, Pablo or Aaron?
There's a channel on YouTube I follow. It's called Dirty Civilian. They have a couple of videos focused on those masks. And they actually go through it, like they're dosing themselves with tear gas and a whole bunch of stuff to see how effective the masks actually are, and if they can actually function while they're using them. So that's a pretty good reference on what kind of brands protect against what. And it also gives you something that you could potentially do with your buddies, like, hey, get one of these masks. I don't know where they get those kind of gases, but actually put it on, make sure you have a good seal, try it out, whether you're driving or walking, running, whatever it is. Can you actually handle it?
Yeah. Here, I'm going to throw a couple of comments up here. Let's see. We have one from Cindy Crock. She says, I have 6 fire blankets throughout the house. That's pretty cool. I've seen some, I don't know, advertisements or commercials. I don't know if it was on Facebook or YouTube, where there was some like kind of kitchen fire and people were just like throwing a blanket over it.
I keep one in my kitchen.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
And have you ever tested it out and tried it out?
I haven't. I'm not 100% sure on the material. If I had to guess, it's probably like a Kevlar material that's like a Mylar backing. I know the Kevlar blankets for like welding and stuff like that. If you get a small fire, you throw it over there, it just smothers it. So you'd want something like that for like a grease fire or something like that you don't want to put water on. So,
it reminds me, there's a show, I think it's called Fire Country or something like that. The guy that was in it, he was on SEAL Team 6 or something like that, or SEALs, and then he got killed off, and then he went to this show. But they were forest fire fighters, and a couple of them got trapped in the forest while fire was going on, and they had some kind of like emergency fire blanket tent, like a 0-degree sleep.
It looked like a Mylar blanket, but it actually protects you from the heat.
Yeah, so it looked pretty cool. I don't know how like available those are, if it's like super expensive, but if it's something that doesn't take up a lot of room and can deploy pretty easily. Now, obviously, they need it or could use it because they're fighting forest fires. But for everyone else, if it's something that's not too expensive and something that could deploy, I mean, it might be something worthwhile to have. Have you guys ever seen one of those like in live action? No.
I've seen plenty of welders using like the Kevlar blankets, stuff like that, just trying to, and even those, they're not really like made to stop fire just so much as like not get slag everywhere and then start a fire. So,
all right, let's see. All right, let me scroll through here. Bum. All right.
Mountain Natural Prep Station, he asked about the sticker that I mentioned on the bottle. I tried to post a link, but it won't let me. I sent it to you separately. It's a sticker that you can buy. I'll have Dominic share the link for you.
Oh, from the label, the bottle. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, good looking out on that. And let's see here. Sorry here. And yeah, Nate said, if you want to test your canister, you can break your seal, test it, and reseal it in a Mylar bag. So it brings up a good point. So, Brendan, when you buy your canisters for your respirator, do they come like sealed, like shrink wrapped or something like that?
So they're in a Mylar seal. They're not vacuum sealed or anything like that. They're just in there. Usually have a little O2 absorber. But yeah, they'll be in a Mylar sealed thing, because that is a thing where when you break it, they tell you like this is rated for so long, so much usage. So what I do is I keep mine. So I've got my respirator that has them on, and then I keep an unopened pack of the filters next to it. That way, if it's been 6 months or whatever, I'm not sure how long it's good for. But if it's a scenario where I know I'm going to ride through an area and there's a tear gas bin, I'm cracking open the new ones.
Yeah.
As far as just like work usage, I mean, I've used the same filters regularly for months. And like the lower end filters too, like the ones they come with, you can straight up just get an air compressor with an open ended chuck and then just blow them out.
Wow.
And that works most of the time for like your general dust, debris, tile dust, thin set dust, things of that nature, or anything you're like, if I'm cutting concrete or something, if I'm cutting block, same thing. You just spray those out and get a good cleaning on it.
Yeah, because I was thinking, based on what Nate was saying, I guess if you're not using it and you reseal it, then it's not exposed, so it shouldn't really degrade it that much. So if it's resealed in the Mylar, do you think you agree with Nate?
Yeah, I wouldn't see why that wouldn't be a perfectly viable option. Somebody just posted, I guess the blankets that you guys were referring to, like where the firemen can hop in. Apparently, a crew got wiped out a couple years ago using those.
Oh, that's something we're gonna have to research a little bit. Now my limited experience is just watching it on TV and stuff like that, and based on the TV show, it seemed like the wind was, there's the fire and the wind going on. So I guess if you don't have that held, and they were holding it down themselves from the inside. So I'm guessing if there was any kind of gaps or if they couldn't hold on to it, the wind coming through would get under there, bring it up a little bit. Fire can get under there, or maybe it'll burn up all the oxygen under there.
That would be my thought, is it'd be a suffocation or it'd be just the sheer heat, one of those two.
Yeah, it'll provide some protection, but if you're in the middle of the fire, you're still
you're a burrito.
Yeah. Oh man. And then let's see what else. And then remember, fire extinguishers not only expire, but there are different types for different types of fire. Yeah, we were mentioning that before. Yeah, I remember I think there's like 4 or 5 different classifications.
Yeah, so I was going to say that too. During the CERT class, they actually had us use the fire extinguisher. Like they took us to the training facility for Hillsborough County. So they have a really nice way to just make a fire so you can put it out. The important thing about that is you actually have to aim at the source of the fire, which in that case, it was like right there. So yeah, I can see where the source is, but it, like you were saying before, like, do you keep a fire extinguisher in your car? So like if your car catches fire, is it an electrical fire? Is it a fuel leak? Is it an oil leak? Is it under the engine? Is it on the side? Like, yeah, you can try to put it out, but if you're not actually hitting the source of the fire, you're not going to put it out. So from that perspective, the fire extinguishers that people usually carry in a car are pretty small and usually not really enough to put out one of those fires. Getting back to the race car analogy, the full race cars have a fire extinguisher in the car, and they have nozzles pointing at a very specific location. So if you pull a handle, you have a 15-pound bottle that goes off and sprays the whole thing.
Oh.
So, but then that's a very specific case. Like if you, as a civilian, you having a fire extinguisher, ideally the best place to put it would be under your seat. Like there's special brackets that can actually hold it there. Because if you don't have one of those, you essentially have a projectile whenever you get into an accident. That's really bad. But if you have it under your seat, you can grab it quickly. The biggest problem after that is actually finding the fire. Because if it's an engine fire, as soon as you open the hood, you're feeding air to the fire. You're making it worse. And at that point, try to figure out where is it actually coming from so you can aim and actually get it there. That's, it's a tricky situation.
Very good. Yeah, that's a good example there. All right, so let's take this opportunity to segue over to the CBRN kits. Now, basically, again, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear. To me, my thought process has always been this is more of a home kit versus something in a bag. But we're going to analyze it tonight and kind of see where we can marry a couple different things. I know for me personally, I'm thinking, okay, a nuclear bomb goes off, or let's see, Crystal River has an old nuclear reactor for electricity. I think they're closed down for that portion, but they still store the rods there. So if some kind of meltdown in the storage pool happens, or somebody does something there, you can have a radiological cloud go. And then biological, that could be anything from COVID, Ebola, what other super bugs they might have floating around.
Well, that could also be something as simple as decomp too, depending on the situation. Something's been decomposing for 3 or 4 days. That'll be a vector for disease too.
Yeah, very good. True. And then chemical. Now that could be from a chemical plant, or it could be some terrorist type stuff where it's, VX gas or sarin or something.
Well, back to the firefighters, they have to decon after going into a house fire just because of all the chemicals that are sprayed and, treatments of wood and siding
and plastics melting.
I was going to say burning vinyls and plastics and things like that. They have to decon after every house fire.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we did a high house style kit, I think what's pretty popular is, okay, seal the house. Oh, let me close this off here. Well, let's use the example of radiation's coming. Okay. So we're all taught to sit there and seal up the vents in our house, seal all the windows, put stuff under the doors, maybe even make a sealed room, similar to like a microclimate where you're making a cool room or a warm room. You're putting up plastic and what have you. Have your 72-hour kit or your 2-week kit. Then, you got your potassium iodide pills. Trying to think here. What other items do you think can go in either a box or a bag that someone can put together?
For radiation specifically, or just in general?
CBRN.
So for me, my focus would be on decon. I've had to decon more than a couple of times from different situations. Decomp, like I mentioned earlier, I have had the unfortunate experience of finding friends who should have been found several days before. That is not a fun smell, and people melt in Florida heat without AC on. So decon that. I've deconned with chemical exposure. There was a bunch of fun stuff in the mud during Helene, other than a couple other times just by nature of some of the stuff that I do. For me, my go-to is activated charcoal. Scrub down with that. I have a specialized activated charcoal soap for that stuff. And as simple as it sounds, like Aaron was talking about earlier, Dawn dish soap. It's antimicrobial. It grabs stuff at a molecular level. It strips it off. It's better than nothing. There are like super fancy chemicals and foams and things like that to strip everything down. I've never used them, so I can't speak on them. But those are my go-to. Is I start with an activated charcoal, get everything off me, then an antimicrobial like a Dawn dish soap, and then do that cycle 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, well, that's soap.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What would you think about a neti pot? Because you're decontaminating outside, and a neti pot will essentially rinse your sinus. Like,
I'm not familiar with what that is.
A neti pot is just a little pot that has a specific shape. You put it in one nostril, tilt your head, and gravity pushes water through those and out the other one. I use it every now and then when I'm congested to get everything out. So would something like that work to kind of clean up your sinuses?
I mean, it sounds like it would. In my case, every time I've gone into a situation where I knew decon was going to be an option afterwards, I had always worn PPE. And even if it's as simple as Tyvek suit and an N95, sometimes up to full-blown canvas suits with oxygen supply, but that's, again, whole different thing. I've never ran into anything that I didn't have PPE for that I was aware of, you know? So, no, it sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it might be how quickly you do it and what are you using to flush it. So like saline solution, because whatever irritant, what is called an irritant, gets in, it's going to take time for the membranes in your nose, for example, to absorb it. So whether it's the membrane itself or the hairs or whatever. So I think if you get there quick enough and you're using something that won't hurt your nose, like saline, maybe that might be enough to push a large portion out of it. Our body is pretty good at being able to absorb X amount of something, you know, for most things that are out in the wild, per se.
You can probably use saline. If you go to CVS and buy the neti pot kit, it comes with a little pitcher thing, but it also comes with these little packets of salt. So the way you use it is you use lukewarm water, dissolve the salt in it, and that salt helps get everything out of your nose.
Ah. Yeah, Devo said with a neti pot, right? That's what you said, Pablo?
Yeah.
Yeah, she said with a neti pot, you use a saline solution to clear your sinuses. Yeah. So, yeah, that's something to definitely check out. Let's see here. All right. Yeah, I like that.
One thing I will say, neti pot is that just don't use any regular water with it. Make sure it's distilled water. There's been some people that have picked up some pretty nasty infections, and depending on what you've been exposed to, like you may be pushing it farther back in.
Yeah, I can make it worse. It needs to be clean water. I always use distilled water when I actually use it. And then you kind of warm it up a little bit. You don't have to boil it all the way, but you can ideally you want to warm it up a little bit. Just don't use tap water or anything else.
Very cool. You know, one point to add on to that, you know, a lot of times we're thinking how we would react to something or we might need it. But when you have little children in particular, you know, we got to think of it that way too. You know, we always got to have a family lens when we do a lot of these things where we might be able to handle the irritation from something, but our kids might not, whether emotionally or physically, you know? So that's good.
That's something that my wife is far better at thinking of than I am, because I've got, you know, all the antibiotics and all the over-the-counter pain meds and all the allergy meds and all that. My kids don't like pills. So, you know, mom's off doing her thing and I'm on daddy duty. And, you know, all of my kids are blessed with they're allergic to life, you know? So I go to get a Benadryl and they don't eat pills. So what do? Call mom? Oh yeah, we've got everything you have in liquid form over here. I was like, oh, cool. Just not something that crossed my mind, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Nate threw in there, use distilled water and kosher salt to make your own solution. No additives. Pablo, didn't you mention salt or was it Aaron?
Yeah, no, the kits that you buy at CVS, they come with these little packets of salt. I don't think it's kosher salt, but I mean, probably do the same thing.
Yeah, some non-iodized salt, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. All right. So let's see here. All right. Good job, everybody in the chat. We'll love the questions. Keep them coming. All right. So let's see. Any other items we could throw out there related to CBRN? before we
Yeah,
start?
I was gonna say, if you want to have some fun, watch the movie Right at Your Door. Yeah, it essentially describes what you're saying. In the movie, there's an attack in LA, a biological attack, and this guy basically tapes up his whole house. Every single window, every single vent is taped. I don't want to spoil it for you if you want to watch it, but he kind of goes through that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something to learn from that movie, aside from the entertainment.
Yeah. Well,
so here's my question with that, and I might be overthinking this, but like I see always they throw the suggestions, painter's plastic and duct tape, tape all your windows, tape all that. At what point do you start depriving yourself from oxygen?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. Part of the thing is that, in the movie at least, is that when he did that, there's basically no circulation inside. So in the movie plot, they didn't have him kind of run out of oxygen. But it did cause other issues. So
Okay.
like I can tell you, or you can kind of watch the movie, or I can send you a message separately. It did cause some other issues, but yeah, that would be definitely be a concern. Like at some point, carbon monoxide is going to build up, and that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that you don't really see any of the YouTubers talking about. So because like 2 weeks, so it's like, oh yeah, have 2 weeks of potassium iodide. Okay, 2 weeks seems to be the thing for everything. You seal up your house. Obviously, oxygen is an issue. Lack of carbon monoxide. Okay, but then you got the stench of each other, the waste. Even if you're bagging it up, okay, and you can't cook in the house whatsoever if it's sealed. So literally you're eating stuff that is just, you're cracking open a can and you're eating it. Now,
lack of sunlight's going to be a problem. Have
right.
a multivitamin or something to help with that. Like, yeah, you're going to get a lot of problems if you're locked in your closet for 2 weeks.
Yeah. What I've done is when I've pondered it, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to stay sealed up now, say it's a nuclear blast. Okay. There's 3 different kinds of radiation. Okay. So it depends on which type of radiation is coming towards your house. Okay. And what its half-life is.
It depends on a lot of factors. So a lot of like the modern nukes, the H-bombs and stuff, don't have the radiation and fallout risk like we think of, like when you think back to the bombs of the 50s and 60s. And then also, is it an air burst? Is it a ground burst? Realistically, if it's a nation state versus nation state, China decides to drop a nuke on us via an ICBM, it's going to be an air burst on an H-bomb. Realistically, we're not going to have a huge fallout problem. I'd still stay inside for 2 weeks, but it's not going to be like, the Book of Eli style nuclear holocaust. Now, that being said, is it a really crude bomb from Iran that got smuggled in over the border? Yeah, there's a lot of problems there. You're going to have that fallout problem then. But, it's one of those things that you never know until it happens.
Yeah, well, what I had thought, I'm like, you know what, maybe I'll do, you can seal the house and do a room within the room, have like a decon room, have a room where you kind of, or area more than a room, and a bathroom where you can sit there and habitate. Okay. And then at a certain point after 3 days, gear up in your Tyvek suit and your half-face respirator, bring all that waste outside, put it away from your house. I mean, how much exposure? I mean, if it's that bad, the radiation out there, you're probably going to get fried in your house anyways.
Yeah. You also have to remember that, like, I think a lot of people get really caught up with like potassium iodine and iodates. And yes, I mean, I keep them. But that being said, it only stops one very specific, like, carcinogen. It's the thyroid cancer. Like, I think if you read on the pack, it even says if you're over 40, don't even bother taking it, because by the time it affects you, you're already going to be dying at a ripe old age, like,
yeah.
So it's one of those things that is it a catch all? Like, oh, these are my nuke pills, and if I take these, I'm perfectly safe. No, it's just flooding your thyroid with the iodine.
Right.
So
It
you
doesn't
don't
stop
get
the radiation from going and like frying. You go outside and it's so radiated out there, your skin's starting to, melt off.
yeah.
Let's see. Oh, here's something.
I'll say too for the there's a lot of the mop gear that you can run across. Seems to be all over the place. I've seen it a lot of gun shows, and that's like the chemical and other contaminant resistant stuff that the army had. A lot of times you can buy stuff like that still sealed for $10-15 and have a kit set up with that if that's something that's a big concern with you.
Yeah.
So something to think about.
Yeah. Well, I like to apply this analogy to pretty much anything in preparedness. Plausibility versus probability. Yes, it is plausible that we will have some massive amount of nukes going off all over the country. How probable is it? It's pretty far in the low end of potential. It is more likely to have that 1 or 2 nukes dropped by a rogue state, or they're testing the waters, or whatever the scenario. My point being is that we could be okay with, yeah, we're going to be in the house for 2 weeks, but maybe after a couple of days, we can let some new air circulate into the house. The radiation might be low enough that we can absorb without much problems, at least in the short term, by that fresh air coming in. We might still get cancer 20 years later, but that's another problem for another day. That's better than sitting there and suffocating in our house. So if we
That's
apply
something
that,
that I'd be curious to look up, like, and I'm sure someone's already done it, but like, I'm curious the cancer spikes in the surrounding areas of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, 10, 20, 30 years after the blast. I'm sure that research is easily findable, but I'm gonna have to look that up.
yeah. But of course somebody will say, well, it was not the same, weapons. They were so small compared to what we have today. Just like you mentioned earlier, compared to the new stuff we have today. We just don't know what would get dropped in what case. So let's plan for, instead of saying, well, I'll just go on the lawn and God can take me. Well, that's not really a good way to go about it. Let's have a potential option. Like I was mentioning, I'm repeating myself on purpose. Yeah, let's seal your house up for 2 weeks, build a room within a room, and go take your trash out every couple of days and let some fresh air in. It's worth the risk.
So the protocols we have in our house, I do have a area set aside for this, and we have a little SOP with my family for a situation like you're saying. I do think it's on for where we're at, a less than likely scale, but it's not impossible. So we've got the easy to make meals, MREs, things of that nature. One thing that I do harp on, again, not having sunlight for an extended amount of time. We have multivitamins for everybody to keep the vitamin D and vitamin C in us and all that. If everyone's familiar with the luggable loo, the 5-gallon composting toilet, you want to make yourself a cheap one rather than going and spending $40. Get a 5-gallon bucket and some peat moss and some garbage bags. Works the same.
Yep.
Works identical. So our SOP is locked away for 3 days, and then at which point I will don my full, civilian mop gear, if you will. Go out, dump it, kind of survey: are the animals alive? Do they need fed? If they are alive, obviously they will need something, at least water top off and all that. And my plan is to stay outside a maximum of 35 minutes. Come inside, strip down, decon, get back inside, and then pretty much do a rotation of that every 3 days. Try and keep the family as sheltered as possible with me doing minimal exposure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I got a big family. I got a lot of kids, so piling a bunch of kids into one room is already challenges in itself during good times,
Yeah.
let alone the worst day of your life. But they are going to need to stretch their legs. They are going to need to walk around,
Yeah.
probably wait 3 days to walk around throughout the main house, but a 2-week minimum for going outside.
Yeah. Now, what would you guys say is more likely that would impact a lot of people? Okay. Well, a lot of locations. So obviously, lots of nuclear bombs, which I think is very unlikely. Okay. I think it's very unlikely you have multiple radiological sites like nuclear reactors going down and radiating everybody. But then there's chemical and biological. So you might have multiple locations. It might be easier for someone to perpetrate that. But then those have limited scope. So, well, with the chemical, because that's either going to dissipate or just contaminate that specific spot. The chemicals aren't really going to be able to sit there and permeate through 10s and 20 miles out of somewhere.
Depends on the chemical, because that was like a big thing in Syria where they were dropping chemical agents and they were getting blown into towns, and he was messing up thousands of his own people. I forget his name, Assad, I think it was. He was messing a lot of people up dropping chemical agents.
Well, he must have used a lot of ordnance to do it.
Yeah, I think it was a cluster munitions kind of deal.
Let's see here. Now, the biological would be a little different because that falls into like Ebola, and any other kind of bio drug that you might have out there that can sit there and, go from human to human or infect animals and stuff. But that seems to be more slow moving versus all of a sudden. So a chemical thing would be all of a sudden. So will the nuclears. The biological takes more time. What do you guys think about that?
That's a scary one because ain't really much you can do for that one.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of stuff, this is all predicated on getting a lot more advanced notice than most people will put in the time to running their own intelligence and developing their own intel. So, like the fire thing, obviously we may, know about that a little bit ahead of time, but we're all in Florida.
Yeah.
Like if you're in the greater Tampa Bay area, McDill's right there. It's on a lot of different target lists, and it's also, would be a nice target for, terrorist organizations that wanted to strike out against CENTCOM. That we just got done with our little, 20 some odd year adventure in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah.
So, like, I think a lot of this stuff is definitely good to know, but the idea that you're going to get some sort of heads up before this happens, it's maybe a little optimistic. So,
well, when I say heads up, okay, it's like if there's like a general, a biological attack. So if it's like an Ebola, I mean, people get infected. It takes time for that to roll out. It's not like the zombie movies where all of a sudden everyone gets the rage virus and, in 3 days, everyone is infected. McDill is a high profile target for a variety of reasons. So if you're in South Tampa, I mean, I think it should be on one of the high priority lists for you. Well, if you're that close to the base, your plans other than being able to know ahead of time or hedging your bets and leaving to get away from the blast, other than that, you're going to be cooked.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, how do you find out that actually happened? Because if something like that happens, like some kind of nuke, and there's an EMP tied to it, I'm blind. So what does that mean for me? Do I immediately tape up my whole house and block off all the airflow? When do we actually get to that point? Because I found out on the internet, on my phone, a friend called me over the radio, or because I'm actually starting to smell it. Because at that point, taping up my house might be too late.
Yeah.
When I trap that thing inside, how do I get it out? How do I filter it? It's not just actually taping it, is potentially actually filtering it, so it doesn't cause any more issues.
Yeah. I remember there was a thing I saw online. It's like, if you see, basically the only way you're going to know is if you see a mushroom cloud. So if it's a nuke bomb,
There
then it's like,
is a guy who he has not posted in probably 10 years. Tinfoil Hat Ranch.
yeah, I remember him.
Yeah, he did a little series on nukes, and he did a whole chart on distance to flash, time, length of flash, had it narrowed down to, is this a low yield bomb, probably from a terrorist organization? Is this a high yield bomb from a nation state like China or Russia? So counting the flash can give you an idea on distance. Counting flash to blast, that's what it was. Flash to blast was the distance, and then length of flash was the yield of the bomb. And he had a little chart that I kept for years, just screenshotted on my phone, but don't think I still have it.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. You're not really going to get any notice, like I said, other than you seen a mushroom cloud, put your thumb up. I seen something online. If it's bigger than your thumb, it's one thing. If it's smaller, then don't worry about it. But She Flung Dung mentioned something that I kind of agree with here. With the hack attacks, to me personally, the most likely scenario would be some kind of like cyber attack, maybe with some kinetic terrorist stuff, whatever, and the grid goes down. So,
or we just saw that stuff with the Chinese guys, or guy and gal rather, trying to sneak in that fungus that would attack the food supply. So that's a possibility too.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because that is the premise behind The Last of Us, right, Pablo?
Well, that was more of a natural event. It wasn't an actual planned attack or developed. It was just natural that happened and essentially poisoned the food supply.
Yeah.
So nobody really found out until you were totally infected. It was too late.
Yeah. And I think based on what it was, it just fungus dies at a certain temperature or something.
Yeah, the premise for The Last of Us is based on the cordyceps fungus, which can't live inside our bodies at the temperature that we run at, but it eventually evolved and it could. Yeah. So they don't really get into what caused it to evolve and all that. They don't really get into the science or why that happened. That's just kind of like, yeah, it happened, and now we have to deal with this.
Yeah. Well, it made me think of, we have grain silos. Like, we'll store wheat, maybe corn in these silos. I mean, all that stuff stacked on top of each other, it's got to pack in heat, moisture. I mean, this is all stuff where, microbes can grow. So it's just amazing to me how we just don't have silos full of disease, being spread out to everything, with all the wheat berries and all the corn just being jammed up in these silos. I mean, for a long period of time.
Well, they explode, though. So those grain silos will explode sometimes, though.
Oh, okay.
You get the dust particulate from in there, and it basically acts like a fuel air explosive. So a little bit of static will set one of those puppies up. Like, you can look them up online. They're pretty impressive.
Rocket.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
All right.
I have a comment about one of the questions that She Flung Dung posted regarding some kind of iPad with movies, music, or games. If you're stuck inside for a blackout or one of those events, there you go. It's a little Raspberry Pi computer with a Wi-Fi, and in here it's all of Wikipedia, all of WikiHow, all of iFixit, all of Project Gutenberg, which is a library resource of thousands of books that are free, that don't have any copyright. There's a lot of information in here. It's a tiny device, it's rechargeable, and you just turn it on, puts out a Wi-Fi signal, iPad, phone, whatever thing you have that has a wireless connection can get the information from here.
Yeah, it doesn't draw a lot of power. You know, funny thing is, we've all read the Going Home series, right? I know I have, Brendan. What about you, Aaron?
No, still haven't gotten around to it.
What about you, Pablo?
No.
No? Well, in the series, one of the characters had an iPad, and he ended up giving it to the girls, the main character's daughters. And he happened to have a small solar setup. I can't remember. I don't know if they just played games on it.
I think it was downloaded movies or something that he had just pre-downloaded onto it.
Yeah. And he had a small solar setup at the place, so that's how they were able to charge it. And they might even had some DVD collection or what have you. You know, we have so much entertainment distractions these days, but now what's different is so much of it is digital. So it's always been a component of preparedness to have things to keep yourselves occupied and entertained during, dark times. And that was easy when we had all kinds of VHS tapes, DVDs. But now everybody's watching Netflix or Prime or whatever. So it'd be a lot more challenging.
Yeah, but I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I'm from Colombia, most of you guys know. Several decades ago, there was an issue with the energy supply, and we basically had scheduled blackouts. Like in this part of the country, these days, these hours to these hours, you have no power. It was like, okay, we knew it was coming. Back then, what would you do? Just go outside, look at the stars, run around. That's what we did. We had VHAs and all that stuff, but nobody really had a generator to power everything up. We didn't have power banks or anything like that. We had a few flashlights, but other than that, just go outside, look at the stars, walk around, chase around an animal. That was it.
Yeah. Well, are there even parts of the U.S. other than Puerto Rico that will experience like rolling blackouts on any kind of a regular basis? Have you guys ever heard?
Outside of like storms?
Yeah.
Not particularly that I'm aware of.
No.
When I sit there and I try to kind of estimate or extrapolate what kind of like infrastructure issues we could have, blackouts come to mind because they happen in other countries and stuff like that. And how would I deal with those? And I feel I'm equipped to deal with those. Okay. But man, just sometimes it makes me wonder what would be worse. Would be rolling blackouts or just being out for 3-4 days, 5 days. And the reason being is that if you're totally without power, then people can adjust to a certain extent. That doesn't mean they're not going to behave badly or what have you. But if you're going to get X amount of power for X amount of, hours per day, psychologically, is that going to be more challenging for people?
You would just have to get into a cycle. If it's something that's planned, like Pablo was talking about, okay, keep your freezers plugged in, refreeze everything here, maybe have a freezer just full of 1 gallon water jugs so you can turn everything into a refrigerator for the next couple days, something like that. That's how we do when it's storms coming through and we know we're going to be out for 2 weeks. I'll run my generator every 2 or 3 days, run it for 4 hours, refreeze all the freezers, crank the AC down just to, make it bearable for at least the afternoon or whatever. Now I have the little bit of backup that I have plus the solar. So it's not, last year I didn't have to run a generator too long. I didn't do it in a devoted section like that, but something we've done in the past for like Irma and Ian and things like that.
Yeah, there was a comment. LA has blackouts mostly due to forest fires and strong winds. If they have strong winds and forest fires, they will turn the power off.
Oh yeah, that's right. They turned the power off for a lot of people. I wonder. Well, I think a lot of that was for safety versus infrastructure being down.
Yeah, it was mostly for safety to prevent further issues.
Yeah.
So Steve Flung Dung just added another comment. People are dangerous when they are panicky, when they don't know if there's sudden blackouts without an idea of what's happening or why. Prepare for movie level horror, in my opinion. I am a firm believer of most people can handle way more than they think they can handle. That said, if they don't know to expect something, it's little things.
Brendan, you were breaking up. Brendan, you want to repeat what you said?
So I'm in full agreement here. I think most people can handle more than they think they can handle. However, most people, and I will say most typically Westerners, we live a very cushy lifestyle compared to most of the world. So if you're not expecting uncomfort and discomfort comes, or quickly.
You freeze again? So you're saying basically if you know it's coming, people will do better with it, but if it's sudden, they won't.
Yeah.
Yeah. We kind of see that with the hurricanes. I think a lot of people expect the potential for power going out, even the shortages to a certain extent, where the gas runs out or everyone's buying all the bread and the milk and the ice and what have you. So we get a little bit of forgiveness for the fact that we stock up on some stuff. Well, not us, but other people stock up on stuff at the last minute. But anything that's prolonged, I think 3 days. I know it's popular for people to say we're 72 hours from anarchy, or 9 meals away or whatever.
Not 9 meals to anarchy. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a catchy little thing, but I think most people have some food in there. No one's starving in 72 hours. So,
even if you ate nothing, you're not going to starve to death. I do 3-day fast regularly.
Yeah. I don't know what it is, if it's different for everyone, but after a certain amount of time, your hunger kind of goes away. I mean, that's why hydration is so important, where your body just stops the feeling of hunger. It's not that you're not hungry or, you can't eat. It's got to be a biological mechanism.
Ketosis.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it starts, hitting on your thing. Now, your energy levels might not be what they would be if you were eating. But if your activity levels are not as active as well, then it kind of bounces out a little bit. Oh, it's funny. Yeah. She Flung Dung said, yeah, no one's starving in 72 hours. Tell that to my kids. Yeah. My kids will be starving in 3 hours.
What about the dogs? You have dogs? My sister's dogs are hungry.
They're always hungry. Well, it brings up a good point about pets. We didn't discuss pets with any of this stuff. rolling back to, forest fires and stuff like that. I mean, dogs in particular are very reactive to their surroundings. I mean, they hear something, smell something, and they act a certain way. I don't know how a dog is going to behave when he can sense the forest fire. Now, I don't know what the dog senses from it. Is it the smoke? Is it the heat? Is he hearing the crinkling of the burning leaves and wood? But I would like to think, I don't have a dog, but I'd like to think that the dog would still follow commands to whatever extent that they normally do and not have another situation. We're trying to keep our, our families calm and keeping them focused, moving forward. Okay. Especially if we have to leave. We don't need the dog going crazy or the cat. But I mean, I think if a dog is, been around a family long enough and got a little bit of training, I think they'll probably do pretty good. I don't picture them wanting to go run out into the woods and chase the fire. But then you have all the animals surrounding where you are. Now, if they're sitting there coming closer to where you're at because they're trying to run from the fire, is that going to put a little danger for you? Like, are the bears coming your way? Deers are just going to run on by. I mean, you guys got any knowledge about the way animal behavior changes in a forest fire?
Not other than just reading accounts, typically seeing,
Okay. The same can be said in any kind of the CBRN stuff. We have our pets, and that brings up a problem right in itself. Cat, not so much because they generally use a litter box. But if you have a dog or dogs, some people have multiple dogs. How do you sit there and handle that? I mean, if your dog is already been conditioned to go outside to go potty, especially if you've disciplined those dogs to not potty in the house, and then you go and seal up your house and don't let them go outside, how do you sit there and undo that behavior?
Yeah, it really depends on the dog. Like a couple of years ago, we had to evacuate for a hurricane. I don't remember the name, but at the time, my sister was going to school in Gainesville. So we evacuated to Gainesville with 3 dogs. One of the dogs refused to pee outside because it's a new environment. Like, she had an apartment. Everybody was nice and cozy in the apartment, still had to go out to pee. One of the dogs just flat out refused. She didn't feel comfortable. So if you try to do a training pad for puppies inside to try to capture and kind of contain things, yeah, they might not go for that.
Yeah. You don't see that being discussed a lot in any of the YouTube videos. They're like, take care of your dogs, you get food and supplies, but
that was one of my comments when I talk about fires and dealing with fires in your house. One of the comments that I say that people really don't like the previous house where we were, it was a 2-story house. So it's like, okay, if there's a fire and I can't get to the front door, do I actually have a fire escape ladder? Crap, I don't. Okay, I'll get a fire escape ladder. But then the window needs to be clear. Well, crap, my nightstand is right next to the window. I would have to move that. Okay, so I get the ladder, I get everything clear, I have all the steps. Well, yeah, there's 3 dogs in the house. 2 of them are 100 pounds, the other one's 75 pounds. Mm-hmm. How do you get them out? You can't carry the dog and walk down the fire escape ladder. It's not going to work. The dog's going to be freaking out. What's the best solution? Grab the dog and throw him out the window. There's a very good chance he's going to land on his feet. It's going to be totally fine. I've seen dogs jump out a 2nd floor window and they're totally fine. So at that point, what was the plan? If there's a fire in the house, we need to get out to the 2nd floor. The dog's going out the window. I don't have to think about it. If that happens, that's the plan.
Oh, Brendan must have disconnected.
I've never been an animal person. I was always like allergic to it when I was growing up, so I just never got that really like close bond with animals when they'll make your lungs shut down and you can't breathe. But one of the things that's impressed me about dogs and people, I have a buddy of mine. He raises and runs Malinois for the county sheriff department where he lives at, and it's crazy, like the amount of people that think their dog is trained, that actually isn't. They're like, you can't get this dog to obey you under normal circumstances, and you're expecting during a stress time that like all of a sudden, you're going to pick him up. Like you were talking about throwing that dog out of a second story window. Like if the dog's freaking out and you pick him up to throw him out, then you're bringing his teeth nearer to your face.
Oh yeah.
Like, he might not be one that would bite you on a normal basis, but he's having a bad day just like everybody else, So that was.
I volunteered for the tactical games, and one of the guys was running a dog, a Malinois. That dog was his shadow. Whatever he said, he didn't even have to speak. He would just give him commands with his hand, and the dog was just right there. I mean, that dog is definitely an asset in pretty much any situation. But getting a dog to that state, one, it's really expensive. Two, it's like living with the Energizer Bunny. The dog never stops. So it's like constant exercise every single day. That's like way more energy than I have right now. So like it's an asset, but it's a big commitment.
Yeah. All right. So let's put everything together and then we'll do our closings. So what did you guys think about tonight's discussion? Anyone get any new insights? Open up our mind, created some questions for us to check out and research? Brendan?
Definitely questions for me.
Yeah, I mean, I like everything that was said. I do think a lot of this stuff is stackable on itself. So when we talk about the different bags, a lot of them are going to have like the majority of it very similar, and then just one or two niche items attached to it.
Yep.
And then some of them might not be a bag at all. Like the CBRN stuff seems to me more like that would be better to be a tote in the closet more than a bag.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Aaron, what about you?
Yeah, no, I mean, fire's not really something that I worry about too much. It doesn't happen much in the state that I've lived in. I mean, we have fires, but they're usually not affecting me. I mean, the farmers around where I live do controlled burns every year. We've had some state forest fires and stuff like that go on, but I'll probably be picking up a few things, little things for that. Like the CBRN stuff, I'm more focused with a lot of that on basically because of where we live or what we live near. Getting in with as much advanced warning as possible, and then just being gone. I'd like the idea of, especially now that I have a family, just not being where trouble is. That's the part. So yeah, I don't, I was actually looking at radiation detectors, and like, to me, that's the wildfire and CBRN stuff is like, there's so many other things that I want to address for myself now before I get there. But that's like, okay, if I'm ever to the point where I'm like, I have enough, my comm setup is good, my medical stuff is good, all this other stuff, then I'll address that stuff, and maybe I'll, throw a couple of those fire blankets in a tote. But, outside of that, like, it's not a big focus for me, but it was some good points made tonight.
You also pointed out something that's super important. So FWC is really good at controlled burns and keeping our like litter on the ground squared away. That was a big problem when California was having their firefighters. They pretty much made it illegal to pick up any of the leaf litter and the fallen trees, and they didn't do controlled burns on top of all the other problems they had. So they just essentially created a tinderbox over several years. That's something that I personally believe we're going to see a huge problem with in Tennessee in the next couple of years, because I got to ride up back through Jonesboro and Johnson City, a few months after Hurricane Helene, and the entire side of some of those mountains are knocked over trees, and they are not doing anything to clean it up because there was just so much devastation. They're worried about the people, which fully understand. However, you have an entire side of a mountain that is going to be a tinderbox in a matter of 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And these are full-size trees. These aren't just little branches, So that's something that I'm willing to bet is going to be a problem in the next 5 years. But yeah, FWC does a really good job about keeping the controlled burns going. They do them regularly, sometimes 2-3 times a year. They keep the leaf litter off the ground. Not a huge threat in our area.
All right. Pablo, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, so regarding fires, I don't worry about that one too much, especially because Tyler at the CERT class said in this area, we don't really have a lot of natural wildfires. Like when I go to Flatwoods to ride my bike, they do have a lot of controlled burns just to keep things clear. What I am conscious about, because I work in tech, is anything I'm charging, it has a battery. If I'm charging it, I haven't had any issues, but it has the potential for that battery to explode at any point. There's been a lot of recalls for a lot of devices. And I mentioned that because, and I've said this before in the group, this Monday was the time I charge all my devices every 2 months. All the flashlight batteries, everything that's a battery, I charge every 2 months. That was Monday for me. So when I plug all this stuff in, it's like, where am I putting this? Because if this thing goes off, I want to minimize the risk, and I can actually get to it quickly if something actually happens.
Yeah.
And then regarding CBRN, that for me falls into the not very plausible situation. However, after these discussions, I think it would be useful to have at least some kind of mask, PPE protection for eyes and face. That would be like the bare minimum I should strive for. There's a few medical things that I still want to get. Like last time, I think Brendan was the one who mentioned, like, you should still stock some iodine. So like, yeah, I have alcohol. I have a lot of medical stuff. I have IV bags. Based on the training that Van gave us to actually do an IV. I don't have a lot of iodine. I need to stock up on a few of those things, and then I'm going to look into some kind of mask.
Very cool.
At the bare minimum.
All right. Great conversation, guys. I appreciate you guys joining. Look forward to having more conversations with you all. Real quick for our listeners, on July 27th, we are having an activity. There's a medical activity going on, and there'll be herbal stop the bleed, stitches, and some general wilderness first aid. So if you're interested you're in the Central Florida area, reach out, comment in the chat here, or hit me up on Facebook, wherever you sat there and saw the link for this, and let me know. I'll get you the info and let you register. But until next time, you guys have a great week. We look forward to the next episode, and thank you.